The phone rang just as I was about to turn off the lights for the night. Its shrill sound cut through the quiet of my bedroom like a knife, making me jump. Who could be calling at this hour? I picked it up, my voice groggy. Hello? Is this Mr. Last Name? The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. Yes. Who is this? This is St. Mary's Hospital. We need you to come in immediately. Your wife was brought in tonight. She's stable. But there are some things you should know. My heart sank. Stable? What did that even mean? And why was she at the hospital? Where was she found? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. There was a pause before the nurse replied. In a motel room. She was unconscious when paramedics arrived. A motel? My mind raced. Why would she be in a motel? Was she hurt? Had something happened to her? Or worse, had she been with someone else? I didn't have time to think. I threw on the first clothes I could find and sped to the hospital, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The drive felt endless, every red light stretching out like an eternity. When I finally arrived, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit me as soon as I stepped inside. A nurse led me to a small waiting area outside the emergency room. She's awake now, the nurse said gently, but she's upset. You can see her in a few minutes. Upset? That word didn't begin to cover what I was feeling. My chest felt tight, like a weight was pressing down on me. I wanted answers, needed them, but all I could do was sit and wait. Finally, a doctor came out to speak with me. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes and a clipboard in his hand. Your wife is physically okay, he began. No serious injuries or signs of foul play. However, he hesitated, glancing at his notes. We believe she may have taken some medication improperly. It's unclear whether it was accidental or intentional. Intentional? The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Did she try to hurt herself? Or was it something else entirely? Before I could ask more questions, the doctor added, she mentioned being with someone earlier tonight. Do you know anything about that? My throat went dry. Someone. Of course there was someone. I don't. I lied, standing abruptly. Can I see her now? He nodded, stepping aside. When I walked into the room, she was lying in bed, pale and fragile, looking under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her eyes were closed, but they fluttered open when she heard me approach. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, quietly, she whispered, You're here. Yeah, I said, my voice rough. What happened, Claire? Why were you in a motel? Her gaze dropped to her hands, which were clasped tightly together. It doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. I snapped, my anger bubbling to the surface. How could you do this? To us? To me? She flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for it to go this far. But sorry wasn't enough, not tonight. Not after everything. The next morning, I couldn't focus on anything but one question. Why was Claire in that motel? Her cryptic apology replayed in my mind like a broken record. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. What exactly had she done? And who was she with? I decided to investigate. Started small. While she slept in the hospital bed, I glanced at her phone, which lay face down on the bedside table. It wasn't locked, a rare oversight for someone usually so careful. My hands trembled as I picked it up, guilt warring with curiosity. Was I crossing a line? Maybe. But after last night's bombshell, I needed answers. I opened her messages first. A string of texts between her and someone named Ryan caught my attention immediately. Can't wait to see you tonight, one message read. I've missed you so much, another said. Each word felt like a punch to the gut. They weren't just flirty, they were intimate. Plans to meet again. Declarations of love. Betrayal burned in my veins like acid. Then I found the photos. A selfie of them together at a cafe, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. Another picture of her sitting on his lap, laughing. My stomach churned as I scrolled through them, each image confirming my worst fears. Claire hadn't just slipped up and ended up in a motel. She'd been seeing him for months. Months. While I was working late, paying bills, keeping our life together. She was sneaking around behind my back. By the time she woke up, I had already put her phone down, but the look on my face must have given me away. "What's wrong?" she asked cautiously, glancing at the table where her phone sat. "You tell me," I said, my voice tight. She froze, her eyes darting toward the phone. Did you go through my stuff?" "Don't change the subject," I shot back. "Who is Ryan? And how long has this been going on?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, she didn't speak. Then, slowly, she sank back against the pillows, covering her face with her hands. "It's not what you think," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, really?" I spat. "Because it looks like you've been sleeping with some guy named Ryan while pretending to be my wife." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "At first, it was just talking, innocent conversations. Then, it became more. Innocent," I repeated, incredulous. "You don't accidentally fall into bed with someone else, Claire. You don't accidentally destroy 10 years of marriage." "I know," she shouted, shaking her head violently. "I messed up, okay? I messed up so badly. But I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, congratulations," I said bitterly. "You succeeded." She reached out to touch my arm, but I jerked away before she could make contact. "Please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I snapped. "You cheated on me. You lied to me. You threw away everything we built because you got bored, or whatever excuse you're planning to give me." "It wasn't boredom," she protested. "It was loneliness, Matthew. You're always working, always distracted. I needed someone who could be there for me." "Loneliness? Is that how she justified this? So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat?" I demanded, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. "Instead of fixing whatever problems we had, you threw it all away for some stranger?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Too late for apologies," I said coldly. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, their smiles, their laughter, their stolen moments together. It was like poison spreading through my mind, consuming every good memory we'd ever shared. Flashbacks flooded my thoughts. Missed dates because of work deadlines. Arguments over trivial matters. Nights spent glued to my laptop instead of holding her hand. Had I neglected her without even realizing it? But even if that were true, it didn't excuse her betrayal. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I couldn't stay silent any longer. The evidence was undeniable, and the betrayal burned like fire in my chest. I cornered Claire as soon as she stepped out of the hospital room, her hair still damp from washing it in the sink. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. She froze, clutching her towel tighter around herself. "About what?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped, stepping closer. "I know everything, Claire. About Ryan. About your little arrangement." Her face went pale, guilt flashing across her features like lightning. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, slowly, she sank onto the edge of the couch in the waiting area, covering her face with her hands. "I can explain," she whispered, her voice trembling. "No," I shot back, shaking my head. "You don't get to explain this away. You don't get to justify cheating on me, lying to me, and planning to leave me without even having the decency to tell me to my face." "I wasn't going to leave you," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Not like that. I needed space. Time to figure things out." "Time to figure things out?" I repeated, incredulous. "By sleeping with someone else? By sneaking around behind my back while pretending our marriage was fine?" "It wasn't fine," she shouted, standing up now, her voice rising to match mine. "It hasn't been fine for years, Matthew. You're always working, always distracted. We never talk anymore. We never connect. I felt like I was drowning, and you didn't even notice." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Was she right? Had I been so consumed with work, with providing for us, That I'd neglected her emotionally? Memories surfaced. Nights spent glued to my laptop. Weekends buried in projects, brushing off her attempts to connect. Maybe I had taken her for granted. But even if that were true, it didn't excuse her betrayal. So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat? I demanded. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Instead of fixing whatever problems we had, you threw it all away for some stranger? I made a mistake, she sobbed, reaching out to touch my arm. I jerked away before she could make contact. A mistake, I echoed bitterly. This isn't a typo or a forgotten anniversary, Claire. This is our marriage, our vows, everything we built together, and you destroyed it because you got lonely? Because you wanted excitement? I didn't want excitement, she protested. I wanted someone who cared about me, someone who listened to me, who saw me. And Ryan, he made me feel alive again, Matthew. He made me feel like I mattered. Her confession cut deeper than anything else. Alive. Mattered. Didn't I do those things for her? Didn't I spend 10 years building a life with her, supporting her, loving her? So what now? I asked, my voice low and cold. Are you leaving me for him? Is that what Friday is about? Are you running off to start a new life with Ryan while I sit here and pick up the pieces? No, she cried, shaking her head violently. I'm not leaving you for him. I ended things with Ryan weeks ago. But I can't keep living like this, Matthew. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. That's why I said what I did last night. I'm leaving. Not for him, but for myself. To figure out who I am outside of this marriage. Her words hit me like another punch. Leaving. She was actually leaving. You're unbelievable, I muttered, pacing the room. After everything you've done. After everything you've put me through. You think you get to walk away and find yourself? What about me, Claire? What about what you've done to me? I know I hurt you, she admitted softly, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But staying here, pretending we can fix this, it's not fair to either of us. Fair, I spat. You don't get to talk about fairness after what you've done. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, thick and unbearable. Finally, she let out a shaky sigh, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant to hurt you. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. You succeeded. That night, I packed a bag and left. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting matches, no slamming doors. Just me walking out, unable to look at her without feeling the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. As I drove away from the house we'd shared for so long, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, relief. It was over. Whatever we'd had was gone, replaced by betrayal and broken promises. For the first few nights, I stayed at a cheap motel, staring at the ceiling and replaying everything in my mind. How had I missed the signs? Was I really that blind? Friends called, asking if I was okay, but I brushed them off. I wasn't ready to talk about it. Not yet. Instead, I threw myself into work, using long hours as a distraction. At night, I hit the gym, pushing myself harder than ever before. Each drop of sweat felt like a release, a way to purge the anger and hurt festering inside me. Claire tried reaching out multiple times. Texts, calls, even showing up at my office unannounced. But I ignored her. Every attempt she made to explain herself only reminded me of what she'd done. Forgiveness wasn't an option, not now, maybe not ever. By the end of the week, I'd rented a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A fresh start, free from the memories of her betrayal. As I unpacked my things, I realized something painful. Leaving Claire wasn't just about escaping her lies. It was about reclaiming myself. Because somewhere along the way, I'd lost sight of who I was outside of being her husband. Now, I had a chance to find that person again, even if it meant starting over alone. Just when I thought I had figured everything out, just when I believed Claire's betrayal was as simple as cheating and leaving, something happened that shattered my understanding of the situation, and of her. Started with a phone call. I was at my new apartment, unpacking the last of my boxes, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something compelled me to answer it. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Matthew?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, almost nervous. "It's Ryan. Ryan." The name sent a surge of anger through me. What could he possibly want? To gloat? To rub salt in the wound? "What do you want?" I snapped, gripping the phone tightly. I think you should know something," he said, his tone uneasy. "About Claire." My stomach tightened. "What about her?" There was a pause, like he was choosing his words carefully. "She found out," he said quietly. "About your affair." My heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" "Your affair," he repeated, his voice firmer now. "With Sarah. Claire knows everything. How long it's been going on. How serious it is. She didn't leave because of me, Matthew. She left because of you." The room spun around me. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the couch, the phone trembling in my hand. An affair? With Sarah? That was impossible. I hadn't cheated on Claire. Not once. Not ever. "You're lying," I said, my voice shaking. "I wish I were," Ryan replied. "But ask yourself this. Why would Claire make up something like that? And why would she stay silent about it until now?" He hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at the phone in stunned silence. At first, I dismissed it as nonsense, a desperate attempt by Ryan to shift blame or manipulate me. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't ignore it. Over the next few days, I replayed our conversations, our arguments, searching for any hint that Claire might have suspected me of infidelity. Then I remembered something small but significant. A text message from Sarah, sent months ago, that Claire had seen accidentally. It was innocent enough, just a friendly exchange about work. But Claire had teased me about it afterward, joking that Sarah seemed into me. At the time, I'd laughed it off, assuring her there was nothing to worry about. Could that have been the trigger? Could Claire have misinterpreted our harmless banter as something more? Determined to get answers, I confronted Claire. I showed up at her apartment unannounced, barging inside before she could stop me. She looked startled, her eyes widening as she took in my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked cautiously. "Did you really think I was having an affair?" I demanded, cutting straight to the point. Her face went pale, guilt flashing across her features. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then slowly she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I thought you were seeing someone else. That's why I turned to Ryan." "But I wasn't," I shouted, pacing the room. "There was no affair, Claire. You ruined our marriage over nothing." "It wasn't nothing," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Every late-night text, every missed dinner, every time you chose work over me. It all added up, Matthew. I felt like I didn't matter to you anymore. And then, when I saw those messages from Sarah, they were innocent." I interrupted, my voice rising. "Just work stuff. You jumped to conclusions without even asking me. And you never asked me how I felt," she shot back. "You never noticed how lonely I was, how neglected I felt. So yes, maybe I made a mistake assuming the worst. But you weren't exactly giving me reasons to trust you either." We stared at each other, both breathing heavily, the weight of our mistakes hanging heavy in the air. "So what now?" I asked finally, my voice quieter but still tinged with anger. "Do we just forgive each other and pretend none of this happened?" "I don't know," she admitted softly. "But we can't keep blaming each other forever. Maybe we both need to take responsibility for what went wrong." Her words lingered in the air as I turned and walked out, leaving her standing alone in the doorway. By the time I reached my car, I realized something painful yet liberating. The truth didn't change anything. Whether Claire had misunderstood or assumed the worst, the damage was done. Our marriage was broken, not just by her actions, but by mine too. And now, the only person I could blame was myself. Walking away from Claire for the second time felt different this time. Emptier, heavier. The truth about her suspicions had shaken me, but it didn't erase the pain of her betrayal. She had cheated on me, lied to me, and left me. All because of a misunderstanding she never bothered to clarify. And while I couldn't deny my own role in our failing marriage, forgiveness wasn't an option. Not yet, maybe not ever. Instead, I decided to channel my anger into something productive. Something satisfying. Revenge. But not the kind that involved shouting matches or public humiliation. No, this would be subtle, calculated. A slow burn designed to make her feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused me. I started small, reclaiming pieces of myself she'd tried to take away. I bought new clothes, got a haircut, and hit the gym harder than ever before. Every drop of sweat felt like a release, a way to purge the hurt festering inside me. When I ran into mutual friends, I made sure to look confident, put together, like I hadn't been shattered by her actions. Then came the rumors. Through casual conversations with friends, I let slip that I was seeing someone. It wasn't true. I didn't have a girlfriend, but I made sure the story spread quickly. Soon enough, Claire heard about it. One evening, she showed up at my apartment unannounced, her face flushed with anger. "Is it true?" she demanded, stepping inside before I could stop her. "Are you dating someone else already?" I smirked, leaning casually against the counter. "What if I am? You didn't exactly leave me much choice, did you?" "That's not fair," she cried, tears welling up in her eyes. "You know I still love you. I've apologized 100 times. Apologies don't fix betrayal," I said coldly. "And besides, why should you care who I'm with now? You moved on first." She flinched at my words, guilt flashing across her face. "Please, Matthew, don't do this. Don't punish me like this." "Oh, I'm not punishing you," I replied, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "This is just me moving on. Something you clearly did months ago." Her desperation fueled me. For years, I'd been the one bending over backward to keep her happy, to make our marriage work. Now, seeing her unravel because of me gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. But I didn't stop there. I began attending social events we used to go to together, parties, dinners, even the occasional night out with friends. Each time, I made sure to flirt openly with other women, laughing loudly and drawing attention to myself. Claire always found out somehow, whether through gossip or witnessing it firsthand. At one gathering, she cornered me near the bar, her voice low but fierce. "Why are you doing this? Are you trying to humiliate me?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze evenly. "I'm just showing you what it feels like to lose something, or someone, you took for granted." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she stormed off, leaving me alone with my drink. Watching her walk away felt good, empowering even. For once, I held all the cards. The final piece of my plan involved Ryan. I tracked him down through Claire's phone records. A risky move, but worth it. I sent him an anonymous message. "Do you really think she loves you? Or are you just a rebound?" It didn't take long for the seed of doubt to grow. Claire later admitted they'd argued after he confronted her about their relationship. Apparently, he accused her of using him to escape her problems. By the time she realized I was behind it, the damage was done. Through it all, I told myself this wasn't about revenge. It was about balance, making her feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me. But deep down, I knew the truth. Part of me enjoyed watching her squirm. Matthew's revenge was relentless, and it was working. With each passing day, I felt myself unraveling further. The man I once loved, the man who used to hold me close and laugh at my jokes, was gone, replaced by someone cold, calculating, and determined to make me pay for what I'd done. And honestly, I deserved it, but that didn't make it any easier to bear. It started with the rumors. Friends casually mentioned his new girlfriend, painting her as perfect in every way. Beautiful, smart, successful. At first, I tried to convince myself it wasn't true. Matthew wouldn't move on so quickly. Would he? But then I saw him at a party, laughing with another woman, their bodies close, his hand resting lightly on her back. My stomach churned as jealousy surged through me. "Who is she?" I asked one of our mutual friends later that night, trying to sound casual. "No idea," they shrugged. "But he seems happy, Doesn't he? Happy. The word stuck in my throat like bile. How could he be happy without me? Without us? Then came the arguments. Every time I confronted him, he shut me down with biting remarks or icy indifference. You don't get to act hurt, he said during one particularly heated exchange. Not after what you did. I know, I shouted, tears streaming down my face. I messed up. Okay? I admit it. But can't we fix this? Can't we try again? He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Fixing takes two people, Claire. And right now, I'm not sure I even recognize you anymore. His words cut deeper than anything else. Because he was right, I barely recognized myself these days. The guilt consumed me, gnawing at my insides until I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment of our marriage in my head, searching for where it all went wrong. Was it my fault? His? Both of ours? Desperation drove me to do things I never thought I'd do. I showed up at his apartment late at night, begging for forgiveness. I sent long, tearful texts apologizing over and over again. Once, I even tried seducing him wearing the lingerie he used to love. But nothing worked. He looked at me like I was a stranger, a ghost haunting the edges of his life. Things got worse when Ryan pulled away. After receiving that anonymous message, he became distant, questioning whether I truly cared about him or if he was just a rebound. We argued constantly, his accusations mirroring my own fears. Eventually, he ended things, leaving me completely alone. The loneliness was suffocating. For months, I'd convinced myself that cheating on Matthew was justified, that I needed excitement, freedom, something different. But now, stripped of everything familiar, I realized how empty those desires had been. Ryan hadn't made me happier. He'd only highlighted how broken I already was. One evening, sitting alone in the dark, I picked up my phone and scrolled through old photos of Matthew and me. There we were, smiling at our wedding, laughing on vacation, cuddled up on the couch watching movies. Seeing those images brought fresh waves of regret crashing over me. What had I done? How could I have thrown away something so precious? I wanted to call him, to beg him one more time to take me back. But deep down, I knew it was too late. Even if he forgave me, and I doubted he ever would, the trust was gone. Our marriage was irreparably damaged, and it was all my fault. So instead of calling, I cried. For hours, I sat there, sobbing into my hands, wishing I could turn back time and undo everything. But no amount of tears could change the past. All I could do now was pick up the pieces of my shattered life and hope someday I might find a way to forgive myself. It all came to a head one rainy evening. A storm both outside and within us. Claire showed up at my apartment unannounced, drenched from the downpour, her mascara smudged under red-rimmed eyes. She looked broken, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who had once walked out of our marriage for someone else. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice trembling as she stepped inside. I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. What now, Claire? Another apology? Another excuse? No, she whispered, shaking her head. This isn't about excuses. It's about truth. Truth, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. You mean like how you cheated on me with Ryan? Or how you lied to my face while planning your escape? It wasn't just about him, she shouted, her voice cracking. Yes, I slept with Ryan. Yes, I betrayed you. But it wasn't because I stopped loving you. It was because I felt like I'd lost you long before that. Her confession caught me off guard. What are you talking about? You were never there, Matthew, she cried, standing up to face me. Physically, maybe, but emotionally? You checked out years ago, always working late, ignoring me, treating our marriage like a chore instead of a partnership. I begged you to spend time with me, to listen to me, but you acted like my feelings didn't matter. That's not true. I shot back, though doubt crept into my mind. Had I really been that absent? It is true, she insisted, tears streaming down her face. And when Ryan came along, he made me feel seen again. He listened to me, cared about me, treated me like I mattered. I didn't plan to fall for him. I just wanted to feel alive again. And by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Was she right? Had I neglected her without even realizing it? Memories surfaced. Nights spent glued to my laptop. Weekends buried in work projects, brushing off her attempts to connect. Maybe I had taken her for granted. But even if that were true, it didn't excuse her betrayal. So what now? I asked bitterly. You expect me to forgive you because you were lonely? Because I wasn't perfect? No, she admitted softly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the whole story. To understand that I didn't cheat because I stopped loving you. I cheated because I thought you'd already stopped loving me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain pounded against the windows, filling the silence between us. Her confession forced me to confront uncomfortable truths, not just about her, but about myself. Finally, I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Claire, I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Too much has happened. I know, she whispered, nodding. And I don't blame you. But please, don't let this destroy you too. Don't let your anger consume you. Her plea lingered in the air as she turned to leave, pausing briefly at the door. Thank you for showing me what it feels like to lose someone you love, she said quietly. I hope someday you find peace. And with that, she was gone. As I stood there alone, watching the rain wash away her footprints, I realized something painful yet liberating. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had only prolonged the pain. Now, faced with the possibility of moving forward, I knew the choice was mine to make, to hold on to bitterness or to start rebuilding myself piece by piece.